So ladies and gentlemen, thanks for coming. We appreciate it. This is a special meeting of the planning board at this point, so the agenda is a little bit short at the moment, mercifully. Board members, you have an agenda in front of you at this point. I appreciate a motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. Brings us to previous plans, which is 7684 Pippen's Way. This is a Form J release. I think you have the recommendation.
Yep,
from
we
staff.
recommend endorsement.
There you go.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. Okay, so that's going to bring us to the Richmond Great Point development. There are public hearings that we're going to wind up doing at this point. There's only one on the agenda tonight, 7918, 7988. And let's see, 4016 and 8013 are all continued to our meeting on 1013. So that brings us to 3916. And I think before I start, Leslie, do you want to do a little update for us? I think you've all had a chance to read it, but I think there's some things that still need to be ironed out, and I'd like staff to address some of those things.
Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, at the last meeting, you all asked for a draft decision. A draft decision has been prepared, and there are some changes in the version that you were provided a few minutes ago from the version that you received earlier today. And those are all shown in
Little pointy thing?
tracked changes, so you can see what happened. I think the most substantive changes are that, let's see, let me just go through from the beginning. So one change that you do not have that needs to be made in condition 4 on page 7 of the draft decision.
Yep.
The uses that they are proposing all seem fine to staff. The use print shop, next to that it says including mailbox rental and shipping services, although we think that's a reasonable request, and in fact there's something similar to that already happening in the area. It doesn't really fit in with print shop, so we need to move that in with personal services and with retail sales. On the next page, we added 2 new conditions from the draft that you saw earlier. Condition 7, any business located within the MCD shall not be open for business to the public between the hours of 1 a.m. and 6 a.m. Our concern was some type of 24-hour business, like a convenience store or something like that. We did not suggest any hours of operation for the restaurant use that may be happening, because the Board of Selectmen have a public hearing to talk about all kinds of issues related to a common victualer's license and an alcohol license, and so we thought it may be best to just leave that with a single board, the Board of Selectmen. Condition 8, this is really more of a statement, but something that we thought should be added to the decision. We talked a little bit about the NRTA bus stop, and this really just documents that everyone agrees that a bus stop will be located along their frontage, but the location is yet to be determined. So just because it's shown on their plan, that's really more illustrative and not a definitive location. We also need to add a condition in here about any business that's located within the MCD, that they have to provide NRTA passes to their employees annually, and it's a standard MCD condition. In condition 9, I think this may need a little bit of discussion because I think different people have different recollections of what was discussed at prior meetings. The condition basically talks about the removal of one of the curb cuts at 57 Old South Road, which is the Old South Market. And my notes indicated that the board wanted the driveway closest to Lover's Lane removed. And I just need to have that confirmed, that that's the one.
One that was closest to the other one. Now, the out, I thought the out was going to be removed, because they can go out the other one, which is right next to it for the new line of buildings, or go out back to Lover's Lane. I didn't think it was the one that went into their parking lot. I thought it was the one that came out that was being removed. You see how close that is to the other one? So I didn't believe it was the right-hand one. I thought it was the left-hand one.
This one?
Yeah.
No.
I think there was discussion about being too close to Lover's
Too close to
Lane.
the
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I
Remember.
think it just is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
So just leave it the way it is then?
All right, and then in condition 10, the draft that you received earlier talked about a 20-foot wide easement along Old South Road. I think that really needs to be between 20 and 30 feet, and that would allow for maybe some temporary easements for construction, or maybe a wider width is needed. And this also adds some language about the exact width being determined once we have an opportunity to review a future traffic report and determine future needs for the area. And we also added a clause that failure of the town or county to accept the easement would not invalidate the special permit. That's something that the board generally includes. We added a condition, number 12, that all buildings shall be connected to municipal sewer and water service. It's very standard. In condition 13, we added language about the final plans being submitted within 6 months. Again, that's a standard requirement. Condition 14, the pre-construction meeting, another standard requirement. And then 15, the gravel tracking pad to protect Old South Road. And one other thing that needs to be added, I haven't seen a screening or a landscaping plan for the project. So that could probably be included in condition 13, because no waivers were requested for screening.
In RTA passes.
yeah, she said
Yep.
that.
Put
Yeah.
that in my notes too.
Yep. that was brought up.
All right, so that's the draft decision. And you also received a set of plans today, and an email from Dave Arminetti. I hope you all had a chance to review that. And we just flagged a couple of things that need to be addressed in the final plans. The board had asked at the last meeting to have the trash receptacles or the dumpsters pushed further back. And I'm not sure that this plan addresses your concerns, so it's something that you all should talk about. They are showing drainage swales, bioretention swales, and some other things within the easement area. So that's not going to work if we need that area for roadway or bike path or sidewalks or utilities or whatever else. So those things need to be removed and put inside the site. I know that they're trying to address the public wellhead recharge requirement that says to use, natural vegetative stormwater treatment wherever possible, and maybe they can relocate that. If they can't, there's certainly a public purpose for us using that part of the land, and so they may need to propose some subsurface or additional subsurface stormwater treatment. And then the last thing on this plan, the easement that they're showing goes across their MCD area. We would like for them to agree to extend that across 57 Old South Road down to the corner of Lover's Lane. And then the final thing, the grading between the face of the buildings and the Old South Road layout within the easement area, that really needs to be as flat as possible to easily allow for any future improvements. So those are our comments.
Board members, do you have anything regarding those? You're all pretty good. I'd like to go to Mr. Arminetti.
Yeah, I'm fine with those, but that drainage is gonna be a big redesign.
Yeah. Anything else, board
I
members?
just want to be clear on the exit, the existing, exit from the market
Okay.
and what we actually agree on. Because I don't see how, as I recall, we had to kind of leave it because you can't make the cars go all the way over behind that building, and that's not going to happen.
The language in the decision says that they may decide to combine the two into a single
And
access.
that's fine if they do, but what I mean is, as far as what we discussed, we discussed a lot of different things. I don't remember exactly what we decided, but in my opinion, just as one member, it's going to change anyway over there at some point. sort of see this as the old part now. That's gonna change. Probably, so at some point, this is all gonna not matter. I think we need to focus on the line of building. That exit that they have is the permanent, the forever exit versus what may change. So whatever we can do as far as that decision goes, I don't have a problem with it left the way it is. Yeah, I have no problem with it left like that. I don't think we should make them get rid of that, because those cars have to go out somewhere.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
Anything else?
Not right now.
Okay.
Mr. Armadan, hi, good evening. How are you?
There are people here for the clay suite, you don't have to start doing clay.
That's okay, I told them that this is what the application was
Yeah.
for. Please come on down, grab a seat.
Thank you, do I have to?
Thanks, welcome.
Green light.
Yeah, a little green light, hopefully it'll come on. Thanks.
You talk too much, Dave. Good evening, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, board members, staff, and neighbors. Dave Armanetti, the Richmond Company, Richmond Great Point Development. With me, obviously, is Patty Raghaveen, co-director. Attorney Reed is with us in spirit and intellectually tonight, but is traveling. He did have a chance to review these draft conditions with us, so his input has been accommodated. We appreciate, certainly, the staff and the board reviewing a lot of this on short notice. We know, unfortunately, that's the way it usually is, and we appreciate you trying to accommodate your own schedule and our schedule, and particularly the staff who really works hard on this. We understand the reason for some of these changes and really don't have problems with any of them, with one, what I think would be a small exception, and then we just want to maybe provide a little context on a couple of the conditions that Leslie mentioned. But overall, we're very fine with this, and if the board chooses to move in this direction and is so inclined, that would be fine with us. The only condition that we'd like the board and the staff to consider changing is condition 2, which in the draft we have transitions from the bottom of page 6 to the top of page 7, but that may not be the same. But it's condition 2 that talks about leaving a little flexibility in the ground cover between now and the construction documents and building permits. The way it's drafted is to limit individual building increases up to and not exceeding 20% ground cover. And when we looked at the buildings individually, if I can use the pointer, Lot 3, Building 3, which is kind of the small building in the middle here, is already up like 19.9% ground cover. So going up to 20 would only allow about 11 additional square feet, which is maybe a little too tight. So if the board would consider it, and the staff might want to comment, if we could go up to, 25% or even something slightly less than that. I think the whole intent and spirit of the condition is to allow some flexibility between now and construction, and 11 square feet just might be a little too tight. And Murphy's Law being what it is, that'll probably be the one building we end up having to tweak. And we just want to stay in compliance with the condition, even though it's a fairly technical one. Otherwise, we understand the distinction about the uses, the distinction about the bus permits obviously is fine. We understand that's a standard condition. The condition about removing the bioretention and the rain gardens from the easement, we understand the genesis of it and the importance of it. It is going to be a little difficult, I think, as Mr. Marklinger inferred, to redesign this in a manner that accommodates as much as we've shown on the plan, but we'll work our best and our hardest at it. Our engineers can be pretty creative, and I'm sure there's some areas around that we can figure out. And again, I think he's here. We would like to thank Mr. Collier for working with us on that in the meeting we had with him, and some of the suggestions he made, which were valuable. And I'm sure he'll be willing to commit some more pro bono suggestions. Maybe we can be creative and figure that out. So with that exception, those exceptions for a little bit more discussion, we are willing to proceed if the board is so inclined. So thank you.
So,
I'm sorry. One other point that Leslie made, we did try to relocate as best we could from an engineering standpoint, the dumpster and service drives between the third and fourth building and the fourth and fifth building. I think the minimum distance, these are now behind the plane of the building, are 4 to 5 feet. The
Not on the plan.
tension, I believe they are if you scale this. I don't know, Holly, maybe the sheet 3 is maybe a little better because it doesn't show as much detail. The tension we were coming up against is there's doors that come out the side of these buildings, and the further you push the dumpsters and the dumpster enclosures back, they start to conflict with these exit doors. We
Can these buildings have been approved by the HDC already?
No, just the first two,
But then you
lot
can
1
move
and
the
2.
doors and flip the door with the bump, do something, because they're still too close to Old South Road on lot 3 and lot 4.
Well, can the board give us some guidance in terms of, as opposed to 4 to 5 feet, what might be acceptable?
They're still on the Old South Road side, next to the front face of the building on Old South Road. We don't see the back of the building on Old South Road.
So, what would you recommend?
I don't know. They're
I
in the
think-
wrong place entirely, frankly.
Yeah, I think that's a valid question to ask the board if you're gonna bring it up, that it also is a matter of, you
Don't
know,
want to design it for them.
I mean, we did transfer and create a double dumpster service area here, well away from Old South, that can actually serve this building. I think that would be too far for these buildings to travel to be effective from an operational standpoint, and, you know, we'd hate to see such visible buildings end up with trash starting to be piled up outside and
No, you
becoming
need dumpsters. I
an
mean,
eyesore, so.
No problem with that. It's just that they're in the wrong, exactly the wrong place.
I mean, they are gonna comply with your, requirements and the HDC's requirements for screening, so
Yep.
isn't that the whole purpose of screening?
It's not gonna, these are huge. They're dumpsters. No. Can they move them back into, I'd hate
Depends
to,
on
I'd
what
hate to
business
take,
is on.
I'd hate to take away 2 more parking spaces back here, but generally they're back in the parking areas.
Well, is
Everybody
that,
else
You
is.
got the two back.
is that asphalt on the other side of the dumpsters? Is that to back up the truck, or?
Yeah,
So you could just push them back?
we can push them back a little more,
10
they're also,
feet, and then the
it's
truck
also-
just has a little problem.
Swinging in.
yeah, sticking out into the parking lot. And
Yeah, but.
That's why I'm saying we could push it some more, I would just like to hear, are you talking about another 2 or 3 feet, or 15
No,
more
I
feet?
said it from the beginning. I don't think they're in the right place, period.
We just
on
don't
the
see
road,
another
on
spot to
South
put
Road
them
side.
unless you float them on the other side of the parking lot, which I think becomes more of an eyesore.
Yeah, the visibility is going to be, it's all very open there. So, I mean, basically, the idea would be to tuck them in and then screen them significantly, because there's no way you're going to be able to, you know, it's a wide open area. And Linda's right. I mean, we haven't done, especially in the areas where you're most concerned, we haven't done a design that needs to be, that's been approved of any sort. So if we did move them back closer toward the parking lot, another significant number of feet, would that be 4 or 5? You know, you're going to be
I think at least 10 feet from the front plane of the building.
from the front plane. Where would that put us, Dave?
Yeah, so that would be another 4 or 5 feet, which I think is viable. If we had to shift the doors a little bit, as is being suggested, I think the buildings would still look in balance. They wouldn't get
Right.
Because of
too
lot
odd
3,
looking, so.
that particular one that bisects lot 4 and lot 3, that is not 4 feet. I've looked at enough plans in my life. It's farther forward, it looks, than the one on between lot 4 and 5.
Right.
So
And you
I
can
don't
see,
think it's back anywhere.
yeah, you can see whatever it was probably controlled by that door. But I think 10 feet from the corner of the building is reasonable, and I don't think that if you think it through, if you're coming down the road, you're going to have to turn your head to actually see it. It's not going to be visible.
Except Goldfinch Drive comes straight at it, but I think 10 feet from the front plane of the building is probably enough with the fence.
Yeah, with
and
the screening.
I think we can meet that,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
That's the only concern I have.
I will ask you a question then, just for the fun of it, just to throw it back out. If you lose 2 parking spaces, I know it's a little bit more of an eyesore, but all of a sudden you might have gained some significant pedestrian easements through to the main road.
Wow.
Does that work for you? I mean, and I don't want you to.
Do you mean alongside the dumpster?
No,
It's not
he's talking
where the
about from
dumpsters
the
are.
rest of the properties.
Oh,
Put them inside the property, use these nice little corridors that you've developed as to bring you out to the main road.
Well, then that puts them back in the parking area where
No,
most
I'm
of the
just,
dumpsters are.
I'm just asking, and no is an okay answer in that one?
There is the access in between building.
Yeah,
to-
okay.
I guess what we're trying to do is funnel traffic, frankly, rather than scatter it.
Got it.
And I think that.
Yeah, and I think the only other point that maybe is more relevant is this is also providing an area for delivery trucks to be parked in queue without being in the middle of the parking lot.
Point just got well taken.
And it's not like Cumberland Farms,
Right.
where you got no other way to get to that area.
No, I know. I'm just,
It's gonna be, that new road is gonna be not far down.
And as you know, a delivery truck isn't gonna deliver to building number 1 and then drive 20 feet and go to building number 2 and then drive 20 feet and go to building. They're gonna park once and they're gonna find the stuff
We're gonna
where
wheel
they
it.
wanna go. They'll wheel it.
Yeah.
They will not multiple park.
I mean, I hate to say it, depending upon what's in these buildings, like they could wheel their trash, but not a restaurant, not, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, there's gonna be a lot of cardboard with one guy, so I mean, that's the pain, but.
Where is the dumpster for the lot two, the building for lot two?
Isn't that the
They're
one
gonna
you
share
plan
the
on
one?
having them
Yeah.
walk over?
That's-
That when you went.
Far in the back,
That's
yeah.
far,
Yeah.
yeah.
They would either share this one
I mean, if
between
you're
2
gonna
and
walk that
3,
distance.
or share this one.
Actually, would it make more, I hate to keep micromanaging this thing, but would it make more sense to take the one that's in between 3 and 4 and put it over in between 2 and 3? So you have
Or-
a central loading zone right in the middle, and then you've got one in between 4 and 5,
That's
one in
an idea.
between 2 and 3, and then lot 1 and really where the generator's gonna generate the most trash.
And see, the only negative with that was with the sidewalk going out to the potential bus, but we don't know where the bus stop is going to be for sure.
You know, the
You're
way
walking
Sophie
past the
Tees,
dumpster.
the way Sophie Tees is set up, I don't know if anyone is familiar with it.
I've been to
There's
Vegas
like
twice.
5 dumpsters in that little spot
yeah.
that all these different businesses use, and they just back up to one place and wheel them all around on asphalt, works like a champ. I mean, I'm just making a point.
Yeah, I
that's
think
what-
the reason we didn't put one between 2 and 3 is, to Mr. Trudell's point, that that's where the proposed bus stop is currently located, and we didn't want that to conflict and have to have people walk, 2 inches away from a dumpster as they go from north to south and south to north.
Well, that
So,
was just a suggestion, to sort of spread it out.
Leslie, do you see a way for us to leave this, like, the bus stop's not set,
Bus stop's not set.
but neither, can we leave this where a staff decision based on several options?
staff
Because,
doesn't do the-
I mean, I'm just saying, as far as this, we don't wanna get hung up on this dumpster thing.
Well,
This is gonna be a better idea in 10 minutes.
you have to sign the final plans in 6 months.
So,
So remember that. But I do have one idea about the
Yep.
dumpster. And I think Linda's point was a good one about moving the one
Yeah,
in the
share it in the
middle
middle.
further down.
Yeah.
And if you did that, could you just eliminate that loading area in the middle to create a little bit of a corridor?
Between 3 and 4,
Yeah, I don't have.
and
a
have
lot.
2 and 3, the loading area, be the big deal one.
And you can move the bus stop between 3 and 4
Well, the bus stop is not,
as it's floated.
Yeah,
Right
so
there.
eliminating that.
all right, can we have one conversation up for, please? Leslie?
So eliminating that
no, she wants to do the opposite.
altogether and move this.
She wants to do the other way.
No, what I was saying is that the one between 3 and 4, that dumpster goes over between 2 and 3. I see when, if the Nerda thing is moving around, and the loading zone is in between 4 and 3, and he can get all the buildings on both sides.
Can,
That was my suggestion.
and I've got a suggestion I'm gonna throw out to you right now. Why don't we approve it as is at this point? If they need to modify it as it moves along, let them come back to us. Because ultimately, when they start putting everything together and see how it really begins to function and who's moving in there, it gives them the optimum flexibility.
And that's what I'm, thank you, Barry, because the tenants are what's gonna drive us somewhat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we don't
Exactly,
sign the
so-
final plan, but they just gotta be 10 feet behind it from
Yeah.
the building.
I'm just
Yeah,
feeling
I
like
agree with that one.
they're kind of hearing you, but let's move ahead with what we've
It
got.
also looks
on-
like a large dumpster.
Yeah, let's move ahead with what we've got.
They do.
Make little plastic ones.
Yeah.
Have
By
that.
cutting them in half, you're also moving it back.
All right, well, here you
That's
go.
true, Jim, that's true.
Are we just going to let them move ahead, and then if they need
Yes,
to come back?
yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think they've heard a number of different ideas about what we're looking for. I have to believe that we've got to let them, they've done the right thing so far.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, so, and if they need to, they can come back to us for a very minor modification when they finally see how it's gonna lay itself out.
Okay.
Okay? So, was there anything else that you guys had?
I'm happy.
Mr.
Leslie?
Chairman, can we just go back to condition 2?
Yep.
I think Dave and I are reading condition 2 totally different ways, but we're both sort of in agreement on the concept.
Sure.
So, the way I had interpreted condition 2 was that any change to a building that increased it or decreased it by like 20%, which now that I'm actually looking at the plan, it's probably a little much. But I wasn't reading it as 20%
20% ground
was a
cover.
lot.
Okay.
So maybe just some kind
That's
of
what I
language
thought
tweak.
too. You meant 20%
Of the building
Of the
size.
building size.
of the building size. You did
Which
mean
is
ground cover.
probably way too much.
Okay.
Because where they gonna get 20% from, yeah?
If they were gonna be that big.
Why don't you make
Well,
it,
no, because the total square footage of the whole, of all the buildings wouldn't change. So all the buildings together could be 15,500, but within that
Excuse me.
15,500.
Can you thank you. If you need to have a conversation on that level, just I'd ask you if you can come on back in. Thank you. Sorry, Leslie.
But within that 15,500, the individual building sizes fluctuate. So I think we're on the same page.
20% is
Just
fine.
have the language
20% is
wrong.
fine. I mean, because if the total's gonna be the same, you know, what difference does it make?
Is it only on that one building, Mr. Rosenbaum?
No, I think through you, Mr. Chairman, if we just clarify and say 20% of building area or X% of building area, that's fine.
Okay.
That clarification that Leslie suggested is fine.
It's fine.
All right. Is there anything else? All right. Are you guys good with where we're tracking to now? Okay.
Absolutely.
Leslie, do you feel like, just out of curiosity, with where we've gone so far, that we can move ahead with the decision tonight and you guys can make the final changes to it? Okay, good. All right, so if there's nothing else from the board, nothing else from the applicants at this point, is there anyone in the audience that'd like to comment on this? No? Yeah, please, come on down.
Mr. Chairman, Ken Gentner, 45.
You got microphones there, which, yeah.
So you'd like me by mic, okay.
Yeah, please, I really
Thanks.
appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. Oh, okay, thanks. I'll repeat. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Ken Gentner, 45 Gold Finch Drive, and also the chair of the North Shore Homeowners Association.
Welcome.
Thank you. We were pleased to see the revisions that took place between the last meeting or hearing on this application and today, and we thank Mr. Arminetti and Richmond Great Point for listening and making modifications that we think are appropriate. I am a little dismayed to learn that you all collectively do not intend to weigh in on some of the finer points of the hours of operation for some of these buildings. I understand the logic of it, but we focused our commentary to you, not the Board of Selectmen.
Mm-hmm.
Shame on us for not thinking about the way they're issuing permits for use, and we'll pursue that. But it seemed to me that in conversations that we had over the course of the summer, there was some resonance to the comments that we made in terms of restrictions. And I would encourage you, if it's appropriate, to convey some of that thinking that you might hold to the Board of Selectmen, rather than just defer without comment. I don't know if that's possible, but I would encourage it. And we'll pursue it with them, and we'll convey our previously expressed thoughts that are in writing to them on copy to see whether we might similarly influence them. We don't have any great concerns on the liner building applications at this point, given the conversations that have occurred. The illumination of the outdoor patio area is important to us. Would you consider a permanent restriction? And the only reason I say this is that I believe that in the last meeting it was stated that by, I believe, Patty Rogovine, that perhaps that would be eliminated but might come back depending on the desires of a tenant, I would like to be in a position where I could consider this a settled matter. It's not there now. I'd like it not to come back. And that's really the only other thing. I'm going to count on you and ultimately the landscaping plan for proper screening on dumpsters and things like that, since they would back up closest to Old South Road. And it's not just a North Shop issue. I think anybody driving by would like to not see dumpsters.
And you're primarily concerned, reading this list, Barry, that you have, you're primarily concerned about the restaurant use and not so much the retail or the office or...
Well, we'll express, if I might step back, and look in a more macro sense. When we negotiated and negotiated the memorandum of understanding going way back, and that's not relevant directly to these applications because it had to do with the Valero site, but then within the area plan
We talked about it.
process, we talked about those sorts of things at length, and I would like to just refer back to those plans, and so something that would fit within those guidelines or restrictions would, I don't see a reason why we would want to revisit it now. We are concerned about noise generally. It's going to become a noisier area over time, so having appropriate restrictions on hours of operation are appropriate.
Yeah. To address a lot of what I see here, which is mostly related to the restaurant. I had expressed a lot of the concerns of the restaurant the last meeting we had on this. And right now, the restaurant is on the approved list of uses. It would eliminate a lot of the conversation right now if the restaurant came off that approved list and they would have to come back for a special, to modify the permit, and then we could deal with the hours of operation and all that other stuff. Because then we don't have to look at this list about putting in the hours of operation, the lighting, how many guests, how many people, all that stuff that's on this list. I think that would eliminate that from a problem right now, as if that was one of the uses that had to come back to us. And then we talk about the hours, outdoor seating, if that's still there or whatever. I'm more comfortable with that. I think I said that the last time. I understand the rationale of if the list stays on the list without coming back here, then we have to rely on the selectmen to exercise intelligence, and that's not always what happens over there. So it may be one of those things they come back to the planning board for, and that way we can then put a restriction on the hours, and we can then relay that to the board of selectmen. Because if the restaurant stays on the permitted use without having to come back here, then we have to rely on somebody else to do the right thing. So that's what my concern is, just on the restaurant part of it. I mean, I don't think anybody in retail is gonna be open past 10 o'clock intelligently out there. Or if somebody's in their office at 1 o'clock then doing tax work or something, who cares? But they have to meet the dark skies on the lighting issue anyway. So if the light scatter goes all the way over to North Shop, there's a problem with the lighting, and that has to be fixed. And as you know, any MCD can be reopened if there's a complaint. But the restaurant thing is the one thing that I'm having a big problem with, staying on the list of, yeah, you can do it without coming back here. I know Leslie is not happy with that comment, but.
It's not my intent, and I mean this sincerely, to torpedo a plan that's almost ready for approval.
Just taking that off the list of approved uses.
Again, I'll just say it because I want Dave to understand that that's not my objective here. I am wrestling with that in my mind because of the split in authority, if you will, between you and the Board of Selectmen. From my perspective, if the issue of the outdoor patio dining goes away, then I'm willing to take my chances with the Board of Selectmen.
I might offer something else to you. I mean, certainly, if we do turn it over to them, one thing is that, given the nature of the beast that's before us at the moment, we can always reopen a public hearing as well.
Exactly.
If it's not working.
I'll say that's why.
Okay? And when an applicant
Like
comes,
done forever.
right, when an applicant comes before us and they know that in the future there is the second bite at the apple,
Yeah.
I honestly think it makes them right at the onset say, we don't want to be back here again. Let's try to do it the right way the first time.
Yes.
There you go.
But, for instance, with one of the applications we have with Brotherhood, okay? There was something that wasn't working well.
Yeah.
We reopened a public hearing under which to do it, several years after the fact of what happened.
10 years.
So there is that option that's available to you, and then all of a sudden, given what the board decides to do, they've got to go back in and reinvent it. So I would, we always caution the applicants that that's a probability whenever you put something up. You have to be good neighbors from the get-go. Because if the neighborhood doesn't like it, they do have that opportunity to come back in, reopen a hearing, and then if it needs to be modified, it will.
And I'm okay with that. And the reason I'm okay with that is because there's a lot of other development that's ultimately going to take place out our way. And I know we're going to have harder conversations later when bigger proposals come down the road for the use of the land behind these liner buildings. And again, in the spirit of, I think, good neighborliness on both sides, we didn't come here today to try to torpedo something.
I appreciate that comment very much as one person.
Anyway, thank you.
Does that help a little bit, though?
Knowing that we can come back if something goes awry, yes.
Yeah, that option, we just got to get the neighborhood to kind of get on board, sign a petition, and send it off to the planning board. Staff will certainly help you guide through that process if necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And it's there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to comment on this? Okay, so board members, what would you like to do at this stage?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Do I hear a second?
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Go ahead. Sorry,
One
Leslie.
point of clarification.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
There was the condition about the removal, that the applicant agreed to remove some of the driveways at 57.
Yeah.
And then Matt brought up that he's
Oh,
sort of
sorry.
opposed to that. So is that staying in or is that coming out?
What's that opposed to the which one?
Well,
He says
did
he
we say
wants
we were
both.
getting rid of what we already have and leaving that one? Leaving the new one? I mean, you gotta move the screen over, whoever's doing the screen. Ollie, sorry.
Oh, go
And
low.
we don't have a little
Here you go.
red dingy-ding thing. Beautiful. Gearing up for the 17th.
Yeah.
The old building.
Can it go that way?
So, this is the one you want, obviously that's staying.
That's right.
Can you move it over to make it smaller?
Thank you.
To what we had before, Holly, was
On the
perfect.
12th is when the rest of it comes back. Clay Street, the rest of it.
13. 13, yeah.
Okay. That's Lovers.
Right.
This is what we have now, right? Is that what we want to get rid of? I don't,
That's what's staying.
and we're gonna get rid of this?
Yeah, no, that's.
We're gonna get rid of that.
Yeah.
Oh, fine. Okay, no, listen.
No,
Remember
it's
when
better.
we discussed the bushes, and I said, why don't we get rid of the bushes and come in this way, so you're not all bunched up in the street?
Yeah.
And Linda said something about 20 feet or 30 or some other intersection thing. No, that's fine. I'm sorry,
I'd rather you be sure.
I thought we were trying to force vehicles. I couldn't remember the exact conversation, because that wouldn't work to do that. Okay, fine.
Good.
So that language then is fine to be left alone. Okay, good.
All right, so anything else before?
The motion's on the floor to close the public hearing. I'll second
Yeah,
that motion.
Okay, the motion was made and seconded. Is there discussion on that issue? Is there anything else before us? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously, and the pleasure of the board at this point.
Motion to approve the modifications made in the office with the staff and the submission of the screening plan and landscape plan, relocation of the dumpsters and power workshop. And the RTA, no.
Leslie, I see you shaking your head. Okay,
We're good.
we're good, okay.
You sure you're not?
So that's the
Yes,
motion
I'll
on the
second
floor.
that.
Okay. Motion's made and seconded. Is there discussion on the issue? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. Okay.
Okay.
Is there any other business before this board that has to happen? That would be appropriate.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
Hold on.
I just,
Hold
as
on.
a point of information, not a discussion item because it wasn't on the agenda.
Yeah.
But I just want you all to know that Andrew and I are working on a list of warrant articles
But April,
for April.
obviously.
Oh, yeah.
It's that time. again.
No, that's
So
good.
If anybody
always
has
good.
any ideas, let us know.
Yeah.
Just so you know, the FinCom made a positive recommendation on all the warrant articles, and they made and the Board of Selectmen made no recommendation
go.